Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the WebCoach series. Today I'm going to be talking to you about examination preparation techniques. So hopefully you've developed those study habits and you've got your assignments done and you've qualified. Now it's time to prepare for your final exam. So the first thing you need to do, my friends, well, you have to figure out when your exam date is. And you have to figure out how much time you have between now and the exam date. So I've quickly pulled off the site for you guys. If you are in November, this is your calendar that you're looking at to be writing your exams. If you're in the November sitting, so the fall session. If you're in the winter session, you'll be writing the week of March 11th to the 16th. If you're writing in the spring session, it's June 10th to the 15th. And if you're here for summer, it's the week of September 3rd, 2013 to September 5th, 2013. And all of this information can be found on the CGA website. So like I said, Yahoo, you've qualified. Count down those days to your exam. Next thing you have to do when you're planning for your exam is you have to figure out how prepared you are. Did you do all the module readings and make study notes along the way? Did you really understand all the materials as you were working through it? Or were you just learning what you had to learn to get through your assignments to qualify to write the exam? Because let's face it, folks, some of us do that. So how prepared are you as of today? Only you can determine how prepared you are as of this moment, and depending on where you are, this is going to direct your future studies. So the first thing that I always recommend once you figure out how prepared or unprepared you are is use a calendar to plan out your studies. You have to figure out when, and don't forget where, you're going to study. Plot it out on a calendar when you know you can dedicate some free time for all the tasks you have to complete to get you fully up to speed. Are you able to take any time off work? Now, I don't know about you, but we only have 24 hours in a day, and we can't spend most of that time awake. And life does happen. You have work, you have family obligations, children's, events, activities, your own activities, etc. So if you are fortunate, you may be able to take some time off work to enable you to prepare for your exam. I, like you, am working towards actually my MBA, and I write my exams around the same time as the CGA exams are being held, but I can't take any time out of the classroom to study. However, when I was a student in the CGA program, my employer always provided me with a day or two off leading up to the exam just to give me the opportunity to prepare for them. So if this option is available to you, I highly recommend you jump on it and you try to get that additional time off work. What about the day of your exam? Have you booked that off? If you can't get time off to study, did you at least consider booking the exam day? It can be quite stressful if you go through a full day at work with all of those pressures and then have an hour or so when you're done work to quickly grab something to eat and then rush off to sit through a 3 or 4 hour exam. Try to see if you can at least take the day of your exam off. It would help alleviate your overall stress, especially at the last minute. Are you part of a study group? So this is one way to get started and get everything under control. Try to join a study group. Some of you have an online or a face-to-face study group. Have you figured out the meetings, when you're going to meet, what you're going to discuss at these meetings? If you can be part of a study group, again, can be face-to-face or virtual, that could be very beneficial in getting you started in your exam preparation. What if you need a tutor? Some of you may find that the material that you're going through, even as you've been working through it for the last few weeks and now towards crunch time for the exam, is just too difficult, or there's some concepts that you can't grasp. So, do you need a tutor? And if so, get that tutor and get that process underway immediately. What is left to complete in the course? Depending on when you're listening to this, you could be listening to this in week 1, you could be listening to this in week 10. So, do you have any quizzes left to do? Do you have any assignments left to submit? I know a lot of you towards the end, you've qualified probably by the 7th or 8th week to write your exams. If you're in that position, I still recommend you complete those last and final assignments because at least it'll force you to look through the material once before you would have to write an exam and start studying at crunch time. But you have to assess how much time you do have left to complete, how much work you do have left to complete in the course, because that also is going to dictate your available time to start studying. Next thing you need to do is you need to visit the CGA Canada website. And why do I say that? Well, folks, that is exactly where the CGA examination blueprint is. You don't really know what you have to study and how you're going to study it until you really review the examination blueprint. So the link can be found right from your course modules, and you're able to go in and take a look at, so that's the first part of the screen. Here's the second. You're able to click on every one of these links for whatever exam you're doing. That way you're able to see the examination blueprint and what the exam is going to be all about. So if I was to pick the very first one, your Advanced Corporate Finance, a PDF document such as this would appear. And it may not be very clear, but it'll give you an idea of what it is we're talking about. So when you're looking at this document here, this will tell me the makeup of the exam. It's the purpose of the course, and it also gives me towards the bottom, it tells me what I am going to expect on the exam. And this is quite important. So in this particular exam, I'm expecting 20 to 30% of the exam to be multiple choice, and I'm expecting 70 to 80% of the exam to be short answer and or short case type problems with some quantitative or qualitative nature. Again, there's no surprises as what to expect on exam day. So I strongly recommend you take the time to go through that examination blueprint to find out what is the makeup of the exam. Once you figure out what kind of questions you're going to be expecting, the other important piece that you will find on the exam blueprint is this document here, and it follows right after the grid. And this talks about what topics, the learning objectives, and at what level you're going to need to study them at. Do you really need to know them well? Do you not need to know them well? And you're going to see levels of competence, level 1, 2, 3, 4. As a quick recap, I'll talk about what those levels are in a moment, right? But this is where you're going to find out what exactly the topics are that are going to be on the exam. So not just the makeup of the exam, but the exact topics and how well you have to know them. So again, as a recap, the learning objectives are itemized by module section. You've got the competency levels. And just to remind you what those competency levels are, level 1 was essential. So you really had to know your stuff. It's an in-depth, detailed review, detailed understanding of the materials. And we've talked about these in a couple of the other sessions. So here, comprehensive, application, analysis, synthesis, evaluation, and those are the problem-like type questions. Very detailed, very important, very integrated. A level 2 is a comprehension level. And on the exam, you have to be able to demonstrate aspects of the topic and apply technical skills. So you're looking at here maybe a component of a problem or of a much larger problem or even a multiple choice question. When it comes something to at the level 3, here we're talking about background knowledge. So on the exam, this means you have to be prepared to demonstrate general knowledge on the topic. So you won't be required to answer anything in depth, but the skills that you develop will be recall and general knowledge. And these are great to be components of a larger problem or, again, a multiple choice question. So back to my recap. We recap quickly 1, 2, and 3. So the exam blueprint is going to tell you those competence levels. And like I stated earlier, the types of questions that are located on the exam. Multiple choice, short answer, etc. And you have to really be aware of that breakdown. The other thing you're going to find is the weighting of those items on the exam. So for each exam type, it's going to say, multiple choice, expect 20 to 30 of the questions to be multiple choice. Expect 70 to 80 of the questions to be short answer items. That, too, is very important, so you know what you're getting into. And every exam at every level is different. Some exams, such as law and economics, are now 100% multiple choice. Others are a few multiple choice and, one large case study and a couple of smaller case studies. Some are just a bunch of short answers. Some are completing of a tax return. So here's where you're going to get that information. Go back to your exam blueprint, take a look, understand the learning objectives that are going to be tested on, what level you need to know them, the depth of that level, and the types of questions and their weightings on the examination. So now that you've figured out what's on the exam, crunch time, you now have to study. So the first thing to do is a module by module review. You're going to start with your module notes. Go through your module notes and see if there's anything that you are not aware of, or you need more explanation on. But your module notes are your guide to what you're going to be studying. The next, go back and read all those textbook pages. All of those text pages that were assigned to you, or that could be just independent readings, that were assigned for each module, go back and read that textbook again. What about your notes? If you've been making notes all along, great news. Now's the time to start using them and reviewing them. If you haven't been making notes all along, now's the time to maybe create them, because sitting down, reading your text and module notes and making your own notes is actually one way of learning, because you're looking at the information again and you're looking at it using your eyes. If you read out loud, you're using your ears, and then your tactiles when you're actually writing. So I strongly recommend that you take the time to, if you haven't done your notes, to create them now. Do all the self-tests. The self-tests are there for you to be able to evaluate your learning and where you are with your learning. So take the time to do the self-tests, and this will also help you to focus on the areas that you are not comfortable with. What about your assignments? I strongly recommend you go back and redo all your assignments. Now you have the benefit of the marker's comments or the assessor's comment, depending on what level you're at. Go back, redo those assignments, and try to ensure that you don't make the same mistake twice. If you do make the same mistakes twice, then you know what? You know where your learning is. You're going to have to go back then to your notes, go back to your text, and go back to your module notes. Audio lectures. Each and every course has an audio lecture component of some sort. If you have a live lecturer, you're with the instructor-led program, you would have had your webinar lectures, and those would be recorded and you could go back to at any point. If not, you have your audio lectures, and again, go back, review your audio lectures, listen to them at your leisure, but at least it'll give you another perspective and another voice to the material. Practice exams. You have to do the practice exams. I strongly recommend that's your next big area of studying. Now, the practice exams are updated to the current material, and they will help you evaluate your exam readiness. CGA also provides you with past exams that you can access. And the past exams, except for some of the ones that are not disclosed, are generally the last 4 past exams that are posted. Now, you have to be aware. There's a few things you must note. When it comes to the past exams, take a look at them and do read the examiner comments, both the general and the question-specific ones. This is going to give you an idea of where people and students, candidates in the past, have done well or have not done well. So you can try to avoid the mistakes of the people that wrote before you. But there's some other things about the past exams you have to be aware of. One, has there been any changes to the course material? This is especially important if you're doing a supplemental exam or a deferred exam also, because if the material has changed, those past exams are not, and I repeat, they are not updated for that old material. So you have to be very careful of the questions that you're reviewing when you're looking at the past exams, more for the structure. If it's a course that has not changed, you should be okay. But if it's something like tax, you'd be looking at different rates completely, and the material would have changed from period to period. And if you're doing that supplemental or deferred exam, here's the bad news, folks. You are responsible for that new material. So you're going to have to find a way to get the new material and review it, because that is what's going to be coming up on the new exams. Again, this goes back to any material not specifically in use. And a big one happened recently. For example, GAP has changed. So if you were looking at exams that were prior to the changeover to the from 1 handbook to 5, then there could be things in GAP that have changed significantly to the point where the answers on those previous past exams are now considered incorrect in today's accounting world. So again, keep it in mind, you have to know the latest and greatest information, and the past exams may not be acceptable if there have been a lot of changes that impact them. Is there a change in focus of the past exams? Has anything significant happened? So is the approach multiple choice, problem solving, or written? Or is it an integrative approach? Past exams will give you that look and feel to help you get through and figure out what you're missing. The other thing you'll start to notice on the past exams, which are really, really important, are there any themes? So what you'll generally find in a lot of the courses is certain things are always going to be tested and asked. What are those certain things? Go back, maybe prepare a matrix outlining your past exams, And this is where you can sit there and actually determine. They're always going to ask you, for example, if it was tax, and I'm just giving you an example, they're always going to make you do a corporate return. They're always going to make you do a personal return. What are the things they can ask me on that return? So those are the things that you're going to go through step by step to figure out what it is that they're always going to ask you and ensure that you have that down pat, because that is usually the majority of the exam. The scenarios within may be slightly different. One time it's a married couple, one time it's a single couple, one time it's a student, but at least you know you're going to always do that particular thing, whatever that thing may be. What about additional strategies? Main strategy is build in constant review. Don't just look at something and then don't look at it again till the night before. You have to keep going back to the material and re-reviewing it on a continuous basis. Place extra focus where you find that you're the weakest. Go through your materials and you're going to realize the areas that you are not strong in. So you're going to have to go back and circle back and review those areas in more detail because of the fact that you are weak. Don't study from those past exams. Those past exams are not this exam. What they are good for is to give you an idea of the type of questions, the flavors that could be asked, the type of scenarios that you might encounter, but that is not the exam that you're going to be seeing in front of you on exam day. So don't use them as a study guide, especially if the material has changed drastically, but use them as a general guide. Now, what if you have to cram? Because I don't know about you, there's always something I'm cramming at the end. Cramming, just so you know, is not useful for any long-term retention. So it's not recommended. You're recommended to learn the material from scratch, especially if it's a course that you're going to have to go back and draw upon later on in the future for your other courses. But if you do have to cram, there are ways to cram properly. 1, preview the material. Skim it, go over it quickly, learn the main points, and omit what you don't have time for. So generally, that is the best way to do it. Other things to keep in mind is you should group information in little points of 5. So if you have 100 things to learn, you're not going to sit down and just memorize 100 things all at once. Break it down into smaller chunks of no more than 5 and learn those 5. Perhaps you can write a key concept on a piece of paper. Write the explanation or answer to a particular concept. Compare your response to the course material. Edit, review your response. Sequence it in the order of importance. So go back, pick 5 things, write them down on a paper, try to address that concept, so an explanation or something that would be associated with it. Compare your answers to your material, edit and review, sequence in order of importance. Because at the end of the day, whatever's not important, you're going to sacrifice, because that's some of the things that you're going to drop and omit in your studies. Here are some test tips, folks. Schedule some downtime along with study time. If all you're doing is studying, you're going to lose your mind. So you've got to take some time for yourself. And that includes eating and getting lots of exercise. I know with me, exercise is the first thing to do. So what I actually do is I have a treadmill. I toss my textbook on my treadmill, and as I'm walking, I'm reading. That's the only way that I can get some exercise in. And I start to feel a lot better about myself. And depending on the time of the year, right now it's the fall, it's dark out, people are not motivated to study. So and I guess if it was really bright in the summer, you wouldn't be motivated to study either. But eating well, getting that exercise gets your heart rate up, gets your blood pumping through your body, and you start to feel a little better, and you start to retain a lot more information. Try to avoid any stimulants and get lots of sleep. So try not to drink coffee too late. I know that's one crutch most of us use, and because our sleep gets sacrificed. If you're not getting enough sleep, you're not going to be able to think, and it'll be like cobwebs in your head. So try to avoid that caffeine or any stimulants, smoking, etc., and try to get lots of sleep. Schedule the day of the exam off from work. I talked about it at the beginning. I'm telling you about it now. Try to get that day off, because if you don't, you're just going to be additionally stressed. However, don't use that day to do any learning. Here's the trick, guys. If you haven't learned it by the morning of the exam, you're not going to learn it the day of the exam. And if you start trying to cram stuff in at the last minute, on the last day, you will panic and you will not do well. Try and prepare your test materials a few days prior to the exam. Take a look at everything that you've got, everything that you need, and get it all ready to go. I usually have a bag and a backpack and stuff all ready and all prepared. This way I'm not panicking as I get closer and closer. I test out my calculator, etc., and I make sure that everything is working. So if you are using a calculator, it does have to be a financial calculator. It can't be one which is programmable. And make sure that you're familiar with it. And if it's solar, great. If it's not, make sure you got fresh batteries in there because I've seen it. Or bring an extra calculator. You never know what can happen. Bring enough pencils, pens, and erasers. And it is always advisable to write all your responses in pen, not pencil. So make sure you have quite a few pens on hand. Tissue, gum, candy, water, earplugs, all needed. I don't know about you, but I cannot deal with people making a lot of noise while I'm trying to do an exam because I get easily distracted. So I need my earplugs in. One time they actually let me put the earbuds of my phone in. So what I recommend is make sure you have your tissue, your gum, your candy, your water, and your earplugs. Don't forget your photo ID. You have to bring your photo ID because you will not be allowed to write the exam without it. So it is imperative that you do bring your photo ID. You also have to ensure that you remember and bring your student number. If you haven't memorized it by now, now's the time to do that, or bring it on a sheet of paper. You will have to be able to put your student number on all the documentation that is presented for you. Bring an extra layer of clothing. Nothing worse than being freezing cold while you're trying to do an exam. Plus, if you've got that extra layer of clothing on and you are too warm, it's easier to take it off than to find something at the last second to wrap yourself up in. Remember to find out where to go for your exam before the scheduled date. I showed you earlier where the exams are located, and you can find that right on the CGA website, so whatever your affiliate is. And you might want to take a short trip to the location before the exam night. You just want to make sure you know where you're going so that you don't panic right away, like right before the exam. The first time I had to change examination centers, that is what I did. I drove there the night before, and I drove there in rush hour traffic because I wanted to make sure I had an idea of how long it would take me in the thick of things. Be prepared as best as you can. And I know that's easier said than done, but you have to ensure that you are prepared. The only way to ensure that you're prepared is to make sure you take the time to get everything together ahead of time. Try to arrive early. The earlier the better. The earlier you arrive, the better the seat you can pick, because I don't know about you, I personally like to sit right at the back of the room. I hate being in the front of the room and not knowing who's behind me, so I like to take the very last row in the back. But whatever it is, if I arrive late, I only get whatever's available. If I arrive early, I know I'm there. I can take time to settle in, get used to the room, get used to my surroundings, and feel comfortable where I am. Go to the bathroom before you start the exam because you will need to sign out if you have to leave the examination room. So it's best to do that right before you go into the examination, or you step out right before the exam is actually going to start. Again, choose that comfortable spot, whatever that spot is for you. Important you feel at ease and in that environment because, again, it's high stakes. You are writing an exam. Next, try to relax. As difficult as that may seem, you would try to relax. So sit there, take some deep breaths, do whatever it is going to take for you to focus. I know you're probably shaking and your heart's pumping and you're anxious, but it's an exam. So at the end of the day, stay calm, breathe in, relax. That will ensure that you try and you do your best. Don't forget to stow your gear in the designated place. They will tell you where you can put your backpacks, your purses, etc., under the table at the front of the room. It all depends on the examination center, but take your materials, put them where they are right before the exam is going to start. Listen very carefully to the invigilator's instructions. They're going to give you key details on start times, when you can and cannot leave, if you're allowed copies of the exam, if you have to sign a note non-disclosure. So all of that information will be provided by the invigilator, so make sure you do listen closely to the invigilator's instructions. What happens when you get the exam in front of you? First thing, folks, read the directions with care. Number one problem that people do is they don't read the examination and the directions properly. Quickly scan the examination paper. Get a feel for what the questions are that are being asked, what types of questions they are, the order of the questions, any topics that are glaring at you quickly. This way, you get familiar with the paper and you know where you want to start. Because some of you do not want to start at the beginning and work to the end. Some like to do the multiple choice first. Some like to do the quantitative first. Whatever makes you comfortable, scan it and figure it out. While you're scanning, again, note which are the easy questions and start with them. If you start with the easy questions, you'll boost up your confidence and you'll do better on the exam because you'll know your stuff, you'll get it down on paper. Having said that, answer the difficult questions afterwards. This way you could focus more time on them because presumably you would have done the easy questions not only first but quickly. Now you'll have more time left to do the difficult questions after the fact. Review the questions and review your answers after you are done because sometimes you may not be asking or addressing the right answer based on the question being asked. If you don't understand it properly, you may miss key things. So, only change your answers if you've originally misread the question. Being an instructor at the college level, I see it all the time. Students actually read the question, they then answer the question, they started to doubt themselves, and they cross it out and they rewrite a new answer. Guess what? What they've crossed out is generally what was right. So the only time you go back and start crossing things out and rewriting a whole different approach and a whole different response is when you've read the question incorrectly and now you're actually trying to answer the proper question. Don't forget to pace yourself. Pace yourself and check the clock. That is very, very important to ensure that you answer all the questions. By not answering any of the questions and skipping some of the questions, you are potentially setting yourself up to fail because there are precious marks in those questions that you've skipped and missed that you are not going to have a chance to actually try to get. Review your exam paper when you are done. This is key. Review to ensure that you've actually answered each and every question. I've seen students actually miss questions. And don't forget, most examiners have commented that students didn't answer the question. Not just they missed it completely, but they didn't actually answer the question that was being asked. They didn't understand what was being asked, so sometimes students go off on a tangent. They can't give you marks for going off on a tangent and not addressing the question at hand. When you get the exam, the other things you have to write for when you're doing your responses is watch your grammar, your spelling, your punctuation. Please, no errors. You want to try to get as clean a paper as possible because this will ensure that your assessor can actually read what you are trying to tell them. Write on every other line, very, very key, on your examination booklet, and don't rewrite the exam questions. We know the questions that you have been asked, so don't waste the time. Again, you only have 3 or 4 hours, depending on the exam you're doing. You don't have time to waste on rewriting questions. So don't rewrite the exam question. Stick to just writing your response. Write in ink. If you write in ink, your response is crisper and clear on the paper. What happens is when your exam is collected and then sent to the examiner to be marked, if it's in pencil, it can get smudged along the root, or it could fade and it's not clear. In those cases, it becomes quite difficult for the examiner to read your response. If they can't read your response, they can't exactly give you marks. Use headings and subheadings. This is key. If you use your headings and subheadings, this gives the examiner the ability to understand what you are addressing and any trains of thought that you may have, because when you do headings, you are prioritizing your response in a way that they can go through and review it. So use headings and subheadings to slice up your work, slice up your responses, and make your response clear. When it comes to calculations, I always tell students to show your work, because especially it's not really important when you get the answer right. It's really important when you get the answer wrong. So make sure you show your work, because you may be able to get part marks for your responses if you veered off in the wrong direction, because they'll be able to see, oh, they've done a calculation error here, but they use the incorrect number correctly throughout the rest of your response. So you may lose 1 mark, 2 marks, 3 marks, but not, 10, 15 marks. What about multiple choice? Here are some tips to responding to multiple choice questions. The first one, read the question carefully. You have to go through the question quite carefully to ensure that you understand what is being asked. Try to also think of the correct answer before addressing and answering the multiple choice question. This will give you an idea of what you're to look for, and you can hopefully easily pick it out in the responses that they're providing to you. Watch for negative words such as none, not, never, or neither. Watch for superlatives such as every, all, always, and only. Why? Well, because negative words and superlatives indicate that the correct answer must always be true or always be false. So again, just to show you, watch for those words: none, not, never, every, all, always, and only. Next thing is look for qualifying words such as usually, often, generally, may, and seldom. Because here your response allows for a little bit more flexibility, and this is used when we have a question that involves some type of judgment. It also may be helpful to highlight, circle, or underline any of those keywords, such as those negatives and qualifiers, because this will help keep them in mind when you're assessing the question and you're reviewing the alternatives available to you. As you assess your alternative choices, cross out any that you know are certainly not correct right off the bat. If you're trying to assess and figure out and you know for sure, A and C are wrong, cross them out so you only are looking at 2 that may be correct. If a question is not familiar to you, folks, do not waste your time on it. Watch your time budget and move on. You don't have much time to waste. Multiple choice questions are set up in a manner, if you're doing 20 to 25 of them, they're set up in a manner where you should be able to get through it in 1 to 2 minutes tops. So you don't have a lot of time to spend on multiple choice questions. Even if you think you've seen your multiple choice question before, read it carefully. Answer can change only with a small change in the wording. Sometimes you will see something that's similar that you may have looked at on a past exam or a practice exam or even from the homework. But take a look at the question carefully because, again, they may add the word not or take out the word not or just change the responses slightly to the point where the whole question and all the correct alternatives have completely changed. Also, indicate on your document any questions you took a guess on, and then you return to them at the end if you have time. Also, folks, when in doubt, put something down. I've seen students omit doing the multiple choice questions altogether. You have a 1 in 4 chance of getting the answer right. So better to put an answer down, any answer down, than no answer. Because if you put no answer, you're going to get a 0. But if you put an answer, you may get some marks. Ignore rules. Those rules such as the correct answer is always C or the longest answer is probably right. Remember, all of the content developers also know those rules, so they will do things on purpose to trip you up. So don't look at the rules. Look for the substance of the responses. So a few last words. I've gone through quickly some of the things that you're going to be aware of, how to answer some multiple choice questions, what to do, write on every other line. Don't rewrite an exam question, write in ink, use subheadings. Get that sleep. Sleep and prepare in advance of your exam. So arrive early, go to the bathroom, choose that comfortable spot on the exam day. But leading up to the exam day, study hard. If you have to cram, I gave you some tips to cram. But overall, you have to try your best. No matter what you do, you are accountable for your own mark. And I hate to say this, you want to pass. At the very minimum, if it's a course you're not comfortable with, do your best to get what you need to get to pass the exam. I have been in those situations. FA4 was my nightmare exam, and that is what I did. I knew I wasn't going to ace it. I did what I had to do to get the pass, and I did. There are some courses in the CGA program you are going to ace and you are going to laugh through the exam. That was my managerial accounting 2 one. There are some courses that are just going to be a nightmare for you. So whatever you do, take the time. try your best, review module notes, studies, go through your old exams, try the practice exams under exam-like conditions, not, in bed comfortable, but in an exam-like situation, being timed. Look at those past exams to see what kind of questions and any themes that you may find on the exams, and try your best. Folks, I wish you well. I hope this little webinar gave you some examination tips and tricks. Good luck, and we hope to see you in admission to membership ceremony either this year, next, or in the years to come. Cheers.